This is Optometrist Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of multi-practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. Today's guest is someone I'm overjoyed to introduce. He's an impressive entrepreneur with an impressive set of practices. Over a decade of experience, he concentrates his practice in medical optometry and dry eye. He's a member of the American Optometric Association, Optometry Giving Site, and is a fellow of the American Academy of Optometry. He's driven by his dedication to giving the highest level of care to his community. He's optometrist and president of the Eye Institute, which is a 5-location practice in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. He's Dr. Adam J. Palo. Adam, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you making time for us. I know you're busy. And so let's jump into it. Want to hear the question we like to ask everyone is, what was the most important thing that helped you grow your empire?
The most important thing in helping grow the business is recognizing my limitations, recognizing my weaknesses, and then following up with people who can make up for those insufficiencies. And the two areas I focus the most on is operations, and then someone who's done the whole thing we're trying to do, who has actually implemented part of the vision before. So taking those two early on, I think we were 2 locations when we brought both of them on. Bringing them on so that we could efficiently implement the vision that we had in place.
So that's really insightful, right? So what I'm hearing you say is, hey, I've got to have enough self-awareness to know that I'm not good at everything, even though I sometimes I feel, me personally, I am. And so you found the people who are good at things that complement you really well. Is that what I'm hearing?
So knowing, having enough, you said it perfectly. So having enough self-awareness to know what my limitations were, so I could put people in place that could fill those gaps. And they had strengths of their own, strengths that helped build businesses before mine, and using their talents and using their strengths to complement what I was either weak in or didn't even know.
And when you were building your empire, what was something that you ran into that you didn't expect? That was like, oh man, that was something I didn't realize was an issue.
So, we had a good following of staff that helped us get from 1 location to 2 locations. And as we grew, we needed to hire more people, obviously. And I noticed a trend of staff loyalty start to slowly decrease because we were looking as more of a bigger entity rather than just me and my partner. So that caught me by surprise a little bit, because in my head I knew how small we were, and to the staff's eyes, we were just growing and growing, and they were doing more and more work because we had to all stretch a little thinner. We all had to wear a couple more hats until we could reach the point where we could hire a certain role to be filled in the practice. So that was something we have since solved, but that took me by surprise, and it took some humbling experiences to get past it.
Can you share maybe 1 or 2 things that you had to implement as you grew to help address that staff? I'll call it maybe turnover, or maybe not as loyal. Well, what did you do? Like maybe 1 or 2 nuggets that you can share with the audience.
The easiest thing that we implemented was sharing the vision, and then a more transparent look into the business side of the organization. Instead of saying we need to do X because of Z and skip Y altogether, we showed them each step to get to Z and why we're doing that.
So heavily focus on the training side and communication instead of assuming they know how to do the job,
Just,
helping them with understanding it. Is that?
yeah, the training side,
Yeah.
more of on the business part of that.
Well, business. Okay.
Like the techs knew how to be techs, the opticians knew how to be opticians, the managers knew how to be managers. But diving in a little bit into the nitty gritty, that was the simplest thing. And then getting them invested in our growth and coming up with more of a creative bonus plan so that they could grow with us instead of just helping us grow.
That's nice. Yeah, it's you can't really. You're not necessarily a giant publicly traded company where you can offer stock options, right? So I like that, getting creative to keep people incentivized.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's uh circling back to, you said you found the people who complimented you and brought their own skills to the table. Any particular way that you what how did you find these people? Were they people you already knew that you got kind of, not necessarily, it was very serendipitous, or was it something you were conscious about and you were like, okay, I want to do a recruiting campaign? Like, how did you find some of these folks? Anything you can share is helpful.
So there's two main employees, and I'll start with the first one, the operations director. She reached out to me on LinkedIn. She saw that we were starting to open some locations, and she is a very intelligent and hungry person who was stuck in a position in a much larger practice, and just she was finding that she couldn't grow in the way she wanted to. And she is extremely intelligent, knows the business inside and out. And we met up for some drinks and had a long conversation about what she saw her skills to be, what I thought we needed, and we found it very symbiotic because exactly as I said before, where I was weak, she was strong. She knew all the nitty gritty of the operational side. And then we took it a step further, and she looked into um, uh, our business, into basically we'll call it the key performance indexes of our business. And she saw some insufficiencies there, targeted them, and came up with plans to bring them up, to make them better. Um, she is worth every penny, and I'm so glad we implemented her when we were small and not when we were larger and we had to play catch up.
Yeah, you said something interesting there. And I think it's an important lesson. Like, people want to be at an exciting place. So if they see you opening up locations, you're posting that on social media, like LinkedIn, people are, and people know you in the local area. It's like, oh, that sounds like they're doing something exciting. I want to be a part of that. So they actually proactively reached out to you versus you having to go find some folks. So I think that's really interesting insight that I don't think that a lot of folks don't do that. So
Yeah.
it's pretty neat to see that.
Showed the initiative
Yeah.
too. Exactly what we want. When we're trying to build something that's a little different, a little more fun, because you gotta have fun with it. Not having fun with it, what are you doing? So you gotta smile when you gotta enjoy what you do. And she was very driven. That was a very attractive quality in a team member. Um, the other was more of um, a consultant, someone who has done this before. They have the scars to prove it. And this guy actually called me to encourage us to be acquired, which was an interesting conversation. We weren't looking, but I'm always open to conversations to anybody, because you can always take something away from a conversation. Take your podcast, for example. Someone could take, a little clip of this podcast and apply it to their vision, and hopefully make their dreams come true, make their business be what they vision it to be. So we got to talking, and this guy, you can tell, you can talk to him for 2 minutes, and you can tell he's done this a lot, and he knows very clearly what he's talking about. Um, so we started talking about what the purpose of the call, And then the conversation started steering more towards, well, what if you joined TEI and worked with us and helped us grow instead of going somewhere and selling when we really don't want to sell and it's too early to do so. So he when we had this conversation, he said, let me call you tomorrow. And he called me the next day and he said, I'm in. Let's do this. And then since then, we've had so much fun. We meet every week and we go through ideas and how to implement new ideas to the business. And we work with the operations director, as of course. And so we see our insufficiencies in our KPIs, and we address those. We address marketing insufficiencies, staffing problems, and then we also like to end each meeting on a high note and highlight everything we're doing right and try to focus not only on what we're doing wrong, but what we're doing right. And that's that he's been invaluable for sure.
So what's the driving force that made you want to grow your empire?
Well, people who know me will say he gets bored easily, and there's some truth to that. But it's more than that. I like the challenge, and I like physical challenge. I like mental challenge. I don't like to be too comfortable. I want to keep going towards uh, something that is serving a purpose, be a contributing member to society, as some say. So how I saw that, in my opinion, the area that I practice in, the Raleigh area, there's a lot of commercial practice being done. And in my opinion of that commercial, in my opinion, is that it's not as comprehensive as it should be. And the only person being harmed by that is the community, are the patients. So why was that happening first? Why is that happening, and what can we do to solve that? Well, I could open up a practice, and I can be a one man show, and we can serve patients the best we can, and there is some truth to that. But in my opinion, I would have a much larger voice if I had a larger company. And how can we take the clinic side and have the most comprehensive clinic, but also have a very original optical as well? So not have one and kind of have the other, but have both and do it really well, and not just concentrate on refractions or basic things that we take 2 weeks in school to learn, but rather focus on everything we were trained to do in school, do it well, educate the patient, educate future optometrists, and in
Yeah.
this, because this is what everybody, when we go to optometry school, this is what we want to do.
And it sounds like you really, you sound like you like hard problems because that is a hard problem to do. How do you scale that high touch, like higher experience, the cool experience? Because it is more high touch, right? You need people to execute really well, and you have to be able to have everything in place. Uh, there's a reason why all the high volume shops are all like low touch and just volume, volume, volume. Lens crafters relies on their brand, right? My eye doctor relies on just you have a habit of going to the same doctor and you just keep going, right?
Mhm.
And so they all want some sort of volume, but you're right. That's an interesting problem. It's really neat to see how you're tackling it too.
Yeah, and you have to differentiate yourself too. There's another side to that, is the fact that there's no way I can compete with the businesses you said. Their pockets are way deeper than mine, and they're going to outspend me in marketing every day of the week. But where they're not going to outspend me is in service. They're not going to outdo me in service. So that's the one area that any optometrist listening to, you can do it in your own practice. Just going above and beyond serving that patient and educating them on their eyes. Because it's one thing to say you have X, Y, or Z disease, it's another thing to say, you have this disease, likely from this source, and this is how you can go about fixing it. These are all your options. Um, this is, if it's genetically inherited, this is what you should look out for or loved ones.
Yep.
So going above and beyond and educating them, pushing a little bit more towards too much information, and they appreciate that. I haven't met one person who says you've talked to me too much, you give me too much.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's always we kind of categorize it in acute care, which is you have pink eye or I need new glasses, chronic like diabetes, and then you have preventative, which is a whole nother ball of wax and looking at all aspects, making sure that they're healthy. And it's really interesting that you're doing that. But let me talk about something that I think is affecting everyone in the industry, including the bigger players, is the staff costs going up and reimbursements staying flat or going down. How are you dealing with those problems in your office? Like, what are some things that maybe some folks can take away from you? Like one or two nuggets that you might have that you could share?
Well, so there's technology for the sake of technology, and there's technology implementation for better practice. And you don't have control, more or less, of what insurance pays you. So what can you, because that's really in everyday life, you have to focus on what you can control. And what I can control are cash payment or cash only services. So take IPL, for example. IPL we use to treat dry eye syndrome or meibomian gland dysfunction. And that's a cash service, and it does exactly what our vision is, and that's serving people to the highest level. And it serves the practice because it's a cash only service, takes 15 minutes to do it. And you're setting yourself to a different level of care than the people we mentioned previously. So basically implementing more cash services has been a good help in counteracting these low reimbursements. Another thing we've done is implementing our own frame line, and that's something again we have control of. We have control over the cost of goods.
Yeah.
Having our own frame line has allowed us to compete with those lower end marketplaces. Won't name any names, but we all know them.
Yeah.
Those lower end marketplaces who were offering, whatever for some insane price as well. This is a clear lens that I'm getting from Dr. Palo, the clear lens from place X. Why would I spend hundreds of dollars when I could spend $100? And that's where education comes in, patient education, not expressed enough, but also differentiating your goods from what's offered elsewhere, and helping the patient understand why you're different, but then also bringing your costs down in that arena, in our own frame line, able to bring our costs down, but still have the same profit margin.
And how about are you having challenges of staffing as well? I know that's a common folks that listeners have that as and one thing that you can say that, hey, this really helped us with the staffing challenges that we're facing. If you're facing that, if you're not, we can skip over that, and maybe you can share with us how you avoid staffing challenges.
So if you just have them come in and you hire them, and they say, I want X dollars per hour, and you give them X dollars per hour, and that's it, you're always going to be chasing your tail, always. But if you get them invested in your vision of practice, if you get them invested in a business and what we're trying to do, and then also them financial incentive with bonuses or whatever it may be, that gives them a reason to stay. That gives them a reason to help the practice and to go a little bit above and beyond and concentrate on that.
Can you give us an example of that? We've been talking kind of around it, but what's a tactical way to get them financially invested? Can you give us one example what that might look like?
It depends on what employee you're talking about. So
let's say the tech. Let's say a good tech that you have that you love does exams, preps them just like you like them. How do you help to get them
Well,
invested?
I believe the Optos imaging, which is the non-dilation imaging, is the best way to view the retina year over year. Because in my notes, I'm going to say healthy optic nerve. In the picture, I can look at that optic nerve and compare it to the year prior. So because I believe that, I want the tech to offer that. You know, I don't want to use the word
Yep.
sell because you don't. We're not selling in an Optos picture. Where it's a service that we understand the importance of it, but how does the patient understand the importance? Well, if you look at it very black and white to the tech, that's just extra work. I could just drop a drop, or I could go over this minute-long presentation of Optos and why they should have it. But if you bonus them on targets that we try to meet, let's just say we want to meet 90% capture on Optos for
Hmm.
that month. Well, if you meet 90% capture of that month, you get a bonus off of that, hitting that marker. But that's different compared to, say, the CSRs or front
Yeah.
desk, whatever you call them in your practice. Those those jobs, we want them to put butts in seats. That's what we need. Fill the schedule.
So they get a percentage. If they hit a certain target of full and shows, they get different like financial incentives for those too.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's really good. I think that's really insightful. Not everyone does that. You're right. Most people I've talked to is like the first way around is like, okay, let's just pay him and that's it, right? All the ones who guests on this podcast have kind of said some form of some incentive. So I think that's really wise of you all to do that. Um, let's shift gears a little bit. What's keeping you up at night? Like, what is the one challenge right now? You're like, man, this is really getting to me right now. It's keeping me up at night.
Well, I don't lack challenges. There's plenty of them. I really try not to let anything keep me up at night. So, there's things you can control and things you can't control. And when you have, I would imagine anybody listening to this podcast is a practice owner or wants to be one. And it really comes down to there's no difference between me and someone who does own a practice. I just pulled the trigger, and that's ultimately what you have to do is just do it. And I'm not smarter than anybody. I'm not any more special. I just did it. So when you decide to make that decision, you have to accept that there's going to be risks, and with risks comes stress, comes worry if you let it. But worrying about something and allowing it to control you like that shows how you don't have control over the situation. And frankly, if you don't have control over something, you really shouldn't be doing it or worrying about it. There's things that in this world take the economy. You really don't have. I don't have any control if the Fed lowers rates. I don't have any control if they decide to um, go to war with some other country. We have no control over that. So don't worry about it. Worry about what you can control. Everything we've talked about up to this point in the conversation are things that you can control, and you really shouldn't worry about it because you're a driven individual who's going towards implementing your vision, and you're going to do so one step at a time. So, yeah, there's things I stress about, and there's nothing that will keep me up at night. I won't let it get to that point.
It's interesting. I feel like we could have a separate podcast just talking about optometry enlightenment. You said two things that I'm like, oh wow, that just seems really wise and really insightful. So the first thing you mentioned earlier in the podcast was having the self awareness to know what your strengths are and admit that, and find folks. And now you're saying, like, well, I only worry about what I can control, and I'm already taking care of those things because I'm taking action towards those. So I'm not really worried about anything because I'm taking action. And if it fails, it sounds like from our previous conversations too, is if it fails, hey, I'll just try something else because I can control that.
Mhm.
So
You got to accept failure. It's part of it. And
yeah,
honestly, failure is what gets you prepared for the next step. So if you look at, let's say this all goes under and you do ultimately fail big time, you're not in the same place you were 5, 10 years ago. You've learned a lot over these last 5, 10 years. And now you can rebuild either the same business or different type of business using the knowledge you've learned. So you're not going to be in the same place. There's a quote I like that I don't know who said it, but even if you fall flat on your face, you're still moving forward. And I love that quote because there's so much truth to it. And you will fall flat on your face. You are absolutely going to. You just got to keep moving forward.
Is there something that is that something just how you've been naturally kind of wired? Is there something you do to work on your mindset that helps you stay focused and stay in that zone? Because optometry ownership is stressful, especially when you have multiple practices.
Yeah.
So I imagine a lot of other folks who are listening to this also feel that. Is there something that you do that really helps with that?
Yeah. You have to, I said earlier, I like mental challenges and I like physical challenges. For me personally, and everybody has to find uh, their balance. But for me, working all day in clinic is my mental challenge, and it continues after my job isn't over at 5 o'clock. But I push physically, and when you push physically, you're also using a mental component because let's take if you're I don't do this, but if you're training for a marathon, well, anybody can run a mile. You can run a mile. So if you now have to run 10 miles or 15 miles, what's going to keep you from stopping at 9 miles or 14? And that's mindset. So that's a person having mental discipline to push that extra step, that extra mile. And when I push myself physically uh, in the gym or in some type of gym, um, I am often pushing myself beyond what's comfortable. That's how you grow. So when you do that, you're also building mental strength, that mental discipline that helps you when you have day after day or hour after hour or patient after patient who is just pushing you and they're really pushing you to your limits. How do you stay sane in those moments? How do you stay collected in those moments? And you do so by training both physical, both mental discipline. You have to have discipline. Motivation is it comes and goes. Discipline is what you need to stick.
So it stays, yeah. No, I'd say that's great. A lot of high performers I hear very similar, right? I physical and
Yeah.
mental. So let's talk a little bit about how Adam became Adam. Take me back to maybe 3 or 4 key moments in your life where you felt like they made a really big impression on you, and they were instrumental in saying, like, you know what, I think this moment really gave me this, that, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have multiple optometry practices, right? It can be the example I like to use is, oh, maybe you started a lemonade stand when you were 6 and you got the entrepreneurial bug. If you have like a couple of moments like that, I'd love to hear some of those from your upbringing.
Well, there's a couple turning points in in my life. I would say when I was younger, um, whether it's a fault or a strength, everybody has their opinion on it. But I don't like to be told. I don't like follow. So whenever I'm told to do something, I always think my natural reaction is to think, well, is there a better way to do it? Is there a different way or better way to do it? And um, I have been in that way of thinking has been ingrained in me since I was a child. I don't know if it's because my dad was an engineer or my mother was always thinking outside the box and always had to fight for what she believed was right. Maybe a combination of two gave me that way of thinking. I'm not sure, but um, I found myself slowly going into entrepreneurship at a young age. And you said lemonade stand, but I was more pet sitting and house sitting for people in the neighborhood. And I remember
Yeah.
making flyers and walking around the neighborhood and trying to get summer jobs basically. But as soon as I was old enough to work legally, I went and got a job and I started learning from that moment what it meant to um, to work for your dollar. And when I reached I started thinking, I was in college. I wanted to do something in the medical field. I had no idea what. I went to NC State University because I was leaning towards veterinary medicine, but that really wasn't working out. But when I was in college, I found myself constantly broke, as most college students do. So I said to myself, I have no time to work. During the day, I have to make sure I'm studying. I have to make sure I make A's. I have to make sure I'm getting uh, where I need to be on a piece of paper for that acceptance letter into whatever med school, optometry school, whatever I do. And so I said, okay, I can't work during the day, so I have to work at night. Well, I can't work at night. I'll be exhausted the next day. So I actually found a job where I can get paid for sleeping. So
You're like doing sleep studies or something like that?
yeah, it was
Right.
yeah, basically a sleep study. They um, that was one. There's two jobs. That was one,
Okay.
and then was basically just standing guard of my dormitory entrance hall, and there was really nothing ever going on between 2 and 4 a.m. and that was my shift. So I'd go there and sit in the desk and slowly fade away and fall asleep and wake up at 4 and then go back to bed in my own dorm and then go to class. And yeah, you expect to make $1 million off of it, but when I was a college student, that was a lot of money. Paid for school or food rather, or a night out with friends if we chose to, whatever it may be. Then I got into optometry school and still found a job where I could work and study. And I was working at the gym, and all you have to do is check people in. You know, I could study and do that at the same time. And the next turning point was when I graduated, and my mom, who has always been the one to push me to do more than I believed I was doing, got diagnosed with cancer. And I remember thinking, before I knew about her diagnosis, I remember thinking, I'm either going to go back to North Carolina and start a practice, or I'm going to go out west and join this big practice that was out there. I think it was in Seattle.
Okay.
And I got a call, I want to say a week later, with her diagnosis, and I immediately said, okay, I'm going to North Carolina. We're going to start a practice. And when I opened my second location, she was able to see the lease being signed, but she didn't make it to the grand opening. So that's my driving, seeing the look on her eyes when she saw her son doing what she always believed to do. It gave me some belief in myself, and reminds me of why I need to keep going, and why I need to keep pushing and doing what's challenging me, doing more than what I think I'm capable of doing.
Sorry to hear about your mom. That had been tough.
Yeah.
Thank you for that story. So, building on that, if you were to go back and a young Dr. Palo just graduated optometry school 4 days after graduation, what would you tell your younger self at that moment in life that you know now? Like, what advice would you give that young version of yourself?
Well, I would tell myself exactly what I did tell myself, and that was, don't get comfortable. I said, never get comfortable, because that's the biggest. What I saw in doctors who were out before me or been practicing decades longer than I have, not all of them, but I saw a kind of them getting comfortable and falling in line of what the commercial aspect of optometry is, and that's what I refused.
It's the I think in Japanese, in lean manufacturing, they call it gentle tension, right? Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So you're constantly growing or striving for something. So that's pretty cool. I like that. So let's switch gears just a little bit. Tell us about yourself. Like, what do you do for fun? You talked a little bit about like all the physical activity. Like tell us what you're doing. Like entering strongman competitions, or what are you doing to keep in shape?
So I am 41, so I'm learning that. That comes with some limit. But I do. I very much enjoy Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu on the side, because when you're doing those types of events, which I think you do judo, right?
I do, yeah, yeah. So I know what you're doing.
Oh, when someone's coming at you, you're not going to be thinking about anything else except in that moment and how to get out of that. So, though Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu are two sports that I can do that really allow to focus just on that and nothing else. Because if you focus on something else, you're going to get hit in the face, you're going to get choked out, whatever it may be.
That's cool. Well, thanks again for being on the show. So where can people find you if they want to reach out to you or find more about you?
Well, so I am on LinkedIn, and I'm also on Instagram, just under my name. And you can always reach me in my email, apollohudi@youreyeinstitute.org, and then our website, youreyeinstitute.com.
All right, we'll put those in the show notes as well. So if folks want to contact you, please do. Really enjoy the conversation, Adam. And thank you again for coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you again, audience, for listening. If you learned something today or laughed, please share the podcast with other folks in the industry. Thanks again, Dr. Palo. This has been another great, exciting episode of Optometrist Building Empires. We'll see you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrist Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.